Chapter 3, A Missionary Journey. From as far back as I can remember, I have been hearing about missionaries. My parents had been missionaries. I was born in a foreign country, and when we returned to the United States, we lived in Philadelphia, close enough to New York to be always meeting boats with missionaries on them and seeing people off for faraway fields. Missionaries stayed in our home, spoke at our church, and were very much a part of our lives. Betty Scott Stam, who with her husband was beheaded by Chinese communists, had been one of those guests. Her father, Dr. Charles Ernest Scott, wrote to me when I was a little girl and sent me things from China, a paper fan, some tiger skin slippers. They were interesting and romantic people, but besides this, they were people of high and serious purpose. Their business was to go out and spread the gospel. Spreading the gospel meant missionary journeys like those of St. Paul related in the book of Acts, when he went out preaching the good news of the resurrection. Our trip from Quito had been a missionary journey in a sense, but I was glad when E.T. said he was going out to preach on Sunday afternoon, and Dorothy and I could accompany him if we liked. This was to be the real thing. There was a 15-mile ride in the pickup truck, over a very rough, unpaved road. Dorothy and I rode up front this time, not on the tailgate. We made many stops to let hitchhikers climb on the back. In fact, we stopped for all hitchhikers. E.T. did not mind how many there were. Where they would find room on the truck was up to them. We drove through miles and miles of sugar cane and banana plantations before we reached a little hut on stilts standing in a clearing surrounded by papaya and banana trees. We climbed a notched pole to a veranda made of split bamboo. 8 or 10 people were there, apparently expecting us, and from time to time another emerged from an enclosure at the back. We sang some Spanish gospel songs, and E.T. prayed and taught a lesson from the first chapter of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was a very familiar passage. I had heard it read at home and in Sunday school and church. I had read it myself in English, and it was the first passage chosen for study in Greek class. The Spanish words, as E.T. read them, were very simple, but what an ocean's profundity they held. Written nearly 2 millennia ago, they were being spoken here on this rickety veranda on a warm Sunday evening, spoken as though these people understood them perfectly and accepted the words as well as the Word. They knew, or did they, that there was a beginning to everything. They knew there was, in that beginning, a word. What word? Whose word? Who spoke it? Who heard it? That word was God. E.T. commented and explained in a rather slow, matter-of-fact way, and the people listened soberly. Would they hear? Would God reach them? I was lost in wonderings. Outraged screams from a pet parrot interrupted the meeting several times, but no one took any notice. Another rough ride took us to the plantation of an American bachelor who grew bananas, hemp, and citronella grass. I liked his house. It was large and airy, built of bamboo and lined on ceilings, walls, and floors with woven straw mats. This gave a cool, clean, light atmosphere in perfect contrast with the dim dankness and wretchedness of the missionary house in which we stayed. But of course, this man was here to make money and had every right to make himself comfortable in the process, so I reasoned. E.T. greeted him like an old friend and asked permission to hold a gospel meeting with the plantation workmen. We went to a dormitory, not much more than a thatched roof supported by palm trunks, with a makeshift partition between the rooms where the hammocks were slung and the smoky region that served as a kitchen. Through the gloom I could see 3 witches, wizened Indian women, bending over glowing embers of charcoal where bubbled a cauldron. We sat down on a plank laid across 2 boxes in the sleeping part of the house and began to sing. Workmen left their ball game and straggled in, curious. When it was dark, someone brought a lantern, and the lantern brought clouds of tiny flies. Again, E.T. prayed and spoke from the Bible. Again I wondered if there were ears to hear. I was glad when the meeting was finished, and we could head home in the clear moonlight. There was something oppressive to me about the meeting. Was it that I felt that the men did not want to listen, but did so only out of curiosity, or courtesy, or sheer boredom? Or was it failure on the part of the speaker to touch their hearts? Was it perhaps more sinister, the powers of darkness in a godless place? There were more hitchhikers. One of them turned out to be a Frenchman, who startled us by calling out in the darkness, "Hi, can you give me a lift?" He told us he was homesteading in the jungle. He did not explain why he had come all the way from France. Things seemed rather mixed up. I had come a long way to minister to Indians. In Quito I had seen some at a distance, but I had lived with Spanish-speaking white people. Now, at last in the jungle, I had meant to leave civilization behind. Santo Domingo was a white man's town still, and here, miles from the town, I had come upon an American entrepreneur and a French homesteader. I shifted my horizon a little further. Santo Domingo was just a stopover. When I reached San Miguel de los Colorados, I would begin my work with the Colorado Indians. At E.T.'s house, everything was dark, and there were unidentified bodies stretched out on the floor of the kitchen living room. The place smelled. It was a mixture of burned grease, onions, smoke, mildew, unwashed people, and the lot next door that served as the town latrine. I climbed into my cot, glad that no one but Dorothy shared this cubicle. The curtain across the door was not much of a barrier, but it gave us some symbolic isolation. I thought of the American's house on the sugar plantation with its light airiness, high on stilts in the midst of the cane like a bird cage, smelling clean and grassy with its lining of straw mats. A great many things determine how people live, and money is not at the top of the list. Choices are always available. What you choose will depend on how you see things. Yourself, your work, your right to express taste and desire and personality, your understanding of the love of God as expressed in His creation and order and harmony. And God saw that it was good. Was it possible that E.T. and his wife saw their way of living as good? It was possible indeed. Perhaps they really liked it. Perhaps, on the other hand, they chose this way as appropriate to a bond-slave of Jesus Christ. They worked in a dark place, a place without the light of Christ, and they were willing to live in darkness. I tried to imagine what our living situation would be when we reached our destination of San Miguel. There were all kinds of possibilities, and we would make it good. Tomorrow we would be there.